Welcome to the Leading Conversations podcast, sponsored by the Excel Leadership Network. On each episode, JD Pairing will have conversations with church planting pastors and leaders from around the country. You can learn more about how to connect with Excel at the end of this podcast. Let's join JD now and listen in on this leading conversation.
Well, welcome to another edition of the Leading Conversations podcast with Excel Leadership Network. Today, we are very excited to have with us the great David Whitaker from Venture Church Network, all the way from South Carolina. Thanks for being here, David.
Hey, it's great to be with you, JD.
So where are you today?
I'm in Greenville, South Carolina. We moved here about 4 years ago.
How is Greenville, South Carolina?
It is awesome. It's if you look for best cities to go visit or even best places to move, it's usually in the top 10. It's a medium-sized city, so you have the options of a larger city, but you have some of the nice things, amenities of a small town. So the people who grew up here think it's gotten too big. Those of us who moved here who have made it bigger think it's a great place to be. So,
well, good. And are you the president? Are you the grand poobah of Venture Church Network, or what's your title?
Yeah, I'm that guy. It's president of Venture Church Network.
Okay. Do I need to address you as El Presidente?
Yeah, or hey you. Yeah, it's a new role for our network.
Good. Well, hopefully we'll get into that, but let's start at the beginning. Tell us how you came to Jesus. Just growing up, what happened?
I grew up in a pastor's home, and so my story is I was this great wicked sinner, and at 6 years of age, gave my life to Jesus. I still remember the moment. It was a midweek service, and I was sitting. My mom wasn't able to be there because she was taking care of my sister, and so I was told to sit in the back and just be quiet and listen. And somehow in the process of that service, I came to realize that I had never really given my life to Jesus myself. And so I did that, told my dad after church, and he made sure I understood what I was doing. And I won't say I never doubted after that, but I can clearly look back at that time to realize that Jesus became my savior.
Wow, that's that's great. At 6 years old, was growing up in a pastor's home a good thing for you? Was it hard? What was that experience like for you?
It was actually great for me. I had parents that tried to make sure that I wasn't behaving for their ministry's sake. And try to make a difference between my behavior as a follower of Jesus as opposed to my behavior as the pastor's son. And so it was a good experience. The problem were other people in the church that were criticizing, that would be critical of my behavior because I was the preacher's son. And so that part wasn't easy, but we had a great childhood, great parents. I don't have a lot to complain about there.
Since a lot of pastors listen to this podcast and they have kids, what is one thing your parents did? I mean, you kind of mentioned already one thing, but what's another thing your parents did as parents of kids in ministry that you just think is great and maybe you tried to model?
Well, one thing was my dad, whenever my dad heard someone make some comments or that came up, he was very quick to go confront them and explain to them that he didn't want kids living a certain way because of his job. And so that was really that really spoke to me and was very helpful. The other thing is they would also provide opportunities for us to engage. So, I was moving chairs, I was stuffing bulletins, I was going with my dad to a hospital visitation to visit somebody sick. He brought me along through it, and I enjoyed it, and at the same time didn't make me feel like I had to. Um, he made it as best as he could, and I mean the reality was I was a preacher's kid, and so we blamed the deacon's kids for our behavior. But he did a good job with that. Um, the other thing that was really that I see with a lot of preachers' kids is the parents are too vocal about the problems they're going through. And um, when you're a pastor, you get shots. People say things, and there's difficulties in every church at some level. And my parents were really good about not having doing two things. And here's the overbalance. The overbalance is you're not exposed to any issues and problems, and so you're wondering, why isn't why aren't my parents happy with that family? And so they would tell us things that are going on, but they were very careful not to create bitterness in our heart um, when they were going through a difficult time. And so I didn't know about some of the things that happened to them till years later, because they were very good about protecting us in that way.
Hmm. Did you have a period of rebellion or anything like that?
Yeah, yeah. I had, in junior high, high school, um, I had the typical Christian kid issue of, is this real? Is this, if I'd been born in a different family? And so I wrestled with my faith a little bit in my high school years. Um, and I wrestled with, even in my early college years, I struggled my first year or two. And I think a lot of it had to do with identity. You know, what is my identity? And, um, am I considered important on the basis of who my parents are, or am I having problems because of who they are? They're getting in the way. So, stuff that was going on with my high school friends, the parties and all of that. Um, it was difficult because I could not get away with going to those because there were too many people in town. We lived in a small community in the early part, and then when we moved to California, that opened some areas of struggle. But I was grateful my parents just kept open communication.
No, that's huge. That's huge. I talk about your call to ministry. What happened there? How'd you get involved in the family business?
Yeah, well, when you're in high school and there's these expectations of people that, well, you're going to be a preacher because your dad's a preacher, and absolutely not. I was going to go into law, or I was going to go into some other thing. I was not going to be a preacher, and I ended up, I don't know. I think I think I I think I got involved in some ministry things. We had buses, so I was given a bus route, and I would go out and try to get kids to ride our bus to church. And that was back in the bus days.
Wow.
And I don't know, in the process of that, just began to get a burden for preaching. And in spite of the fact I didn't want to do this because it was expected, and I realized this was what God was calling me to do. So, which was interesting because my dad was the kind of guy that would walk into a room and he knew everybody, and everybody knew he was present. And I'm an introvert, and I like people, but I'm happy to enjoy my time by myself. And so I really struggled with public speaking. Anytime I got up and I thought people were actually listening to me when I was talking, I get this lip quiver, and um, so I was not a great public speaker, but in fact, I wasn't one, and I had to work through that. But I just felt like that's was God's calling for me.
How'd you work through the public speaking bug?
I minored in speech
Okay.
and just forced myself to, and had teachers work with me and forced myself to work through the issues. And a lot of it came out of my own insecurities because I wasn't the guy that was, would walk into a room and everybody would know it. I was the quiet guy, and so I, had these insecurities that I needed to work through and find my identity in Christ and the reality of the gospel as it speaks into that part of our life, and as well as just practically working through things. But as I look back at it, I think it was my struggle with my identity and my insecurities.
Hmm. Can I ask where you went to college?
I went to Bob Jones University.
I think I knew that, but I just need that. So you're back in God's country in South Carolina then, right? You lived there, and how did you get to Bob Jones from California?
Yeah, well, both of my parents went to Bob Jones. That's where they met. And that was a school I was not going to go to. And we did a college tour, looked at Bible colleges, around the country, and they say what you will, they had a great programs, they had good education, they had a lot of opportunities, and we were still in that fundamental orbit at that time. So it was, I got a great education. In later years, I had to kind of work through the fundamentalist separatist issues, and so I had some conflict with the leadership here back in the day. So Greenville was not on my radar as a place that I would ever live in. But here we are.
What was it? I mean, I don't really know much about. I just know there's a bunch of rules, and as a kid who went to UCLA, it's just hard to fathom somebody going to a place where there was more rules than necessary. What was that like for you and your wife? Did you meet your wife there?
Yeah, I did. Well, we grew up in homes where there were rules and
Okay.
stuff, so that made it a little bit easier. Um, and really, it took me a few years to probably toward the years I was in grad school. I just started looking at some of the things, and one of the things they taught me was to study the scriptures, to be expositional. They did a great job with that, and I started evaluating the rules and started evaluating expectations, and that our value in Christ was not in the gospel, but in our behavior. Um, and so I had to work through that. But it was a great education. I got a lot out of it, but also realized there was a bigger view of Christianity than simply a list of behaviors. What's interesting is the organization, um, Venture Church Network actually had some roots with Bob Jones type of fundamentalism, and that's part of that history. So I think it has served me well to have have had that background as I'm navigating through this network.
Didn't Venture Church Network come out of that though? Didn't it come out of a fundamental? Didn't they? Was there?
Well, we came out of back in the early 20th century, there was a lot of liberal theology, and we were a part of the Northern Baptist Convention. You had the Northern Baptist and Southern Baptist, and the Northern Baptists got pretty liberal to the point where they were no longer requiring missionaries to sign off on the virgin birth of Jesus, the deity of Jesus, the inerrancy of Scripture. And there was a group of pastors and churches that said, wait, that really does matter. So they started the Conservative Baptist Foreign Mission Society. That was like 1943. By 47, the convention said you can't be a part of the Conservative Baptist Foreign Mission Society and us. You got to make a choice. And at risk of their pensions and in some cases their buildings, they came out of the Northern Baptist and formed the Conservative Baptist Association of America. And that's actually Venture Church Network's a DBA for the Conservative Baptist.
Conservative Baptists had Rob used to say, worst name possible.
Well, yeah, what does that name mean? And
in 1943, it was a little bit different than.
Yeah, it meant something. You got the idea. Okay, we're conservative in doctrine. Today, and then that was why we changed our name, is because when you use the word Conservative Baptist, everybody knew what that meant. They had their own ideas, but everyone immediately had something come to mind. So we found ourselves always on our back foot trying to explain, no, we're not that kind of conservative. It doesn't mean our music style or service styles. It's not a style thing, and it's a doctrinal thing. And no, it's not a political thing. It's a doctrinal thing. And so it just we kept stumbling over the name. And so that's why we are now Venture Church Network.
Well, you came college, you said grad school. Did you go immediately into pastoring?
I was on staff at Bob Jones for a while, and then I went and worked with my dad. He had, in 1966, moved we were in Iowa at the time. He was pastoring a small church in mid-state Iowa. And through a series of circumstances, he had a friend that had moved to Sacramento, and he asked my dad to come and do a week of revival meetings. Back in the day, they still did that. And he saw people coming to faith left and right, and he just was amazed by what the open door that was there that wasn't in the Midwest. And so some pastors asked him if he'd be willing to come and plant a church in Dublin, California. So in 1966, he went there. They had been meeting with a seminary professor from San Francisco. And so he became the first pastor. And so I grew up in a church plant in the Bay Area.
Oh, wow. And then what about your pastoral time when you were pastoring?
So I was with him for 7 years, and the plan was I was going to take over the church, and I wanted to, and he wanted me to. But after 7 years, he still wasn't ready, and I was more than ready to take leadership. And so we figured the Lord was calling us elsewhere. And so I ended up taking a fundamentalist church in Phoenix, Arizona, that said they wanted to change. And I was 30 years old and believed them. And so I was there for 13 years. And then in 2004, moved to back to the Bay Area and pastored for 16, 17 years in Morgan Hill, just outside of San Jose.
Wow. And now you're how did you get the Venture Church Network gig? What caused that to happen?
Well, when we moved to my stance with networks and denominations were they were a waste of time. It was a bunch of old guys getting together, talking about things that needed to happen, and I didn't see any value in it. My dad was a proponent of it, but I just never felt I had time. But when I moved to Morgan Hill, we had been planted by the CBA in Northern California, and so they asked me to be on the board, and I thought, okay. And next thing I know, I'm serving on the board, and through a series of circumstances, ended up becoming the regional director for Northern California and Nevada. And I was there for I did that for about 10 years, and we we were 8 regions of church. We were 8 regions around the country. There's about 1,000 churches, and we just weren't doing a good job. The network was dying. The association was dying, and so I remember, and that's probably around 2018, we started asking the question: do we just let this thing die, or do we try to rework it? And most of us felt like it deserved the relationships that mattered. The need was still there. Not that they were the only game in town, but we felt like there needed to be players engaged in helping network churches and helping churches be healthy and get healthy and be multiplying. And so we realized that somebody needed to be pulling the strings together. And so they asked me to take that on. So I had been doing the region full time along with pastoring full time in Morgan Hill. So I thought, well, I could do the same thing nationally, and handed off the region to another pastor in Sacramento. And then I tried to do the national um, part time while I was still pastoring, and realized quickly that wasn't going to work. So in February of 2020, I was asked to take this on full time. They basically said, we have no budget for your role, but we're willing to carve something out and use what we do have and see if we can get something rolling. So in March of 2020, Lynette and I had been praying and decided to take the role. We were up at our Northwest region, and the next day after we made that decision, I get a call from the office saying the governor shut down the churches in California. What do we do? So
Basically, you're saying COVID was your fault. As soon as you said yes, then COVID.
yeah, right. So we got the church. I had been the elders in our church and I were very open with each other, so they knew I was walking through these things. And so I said our focus needs to be on getting our church through this process. So we did, and by May, the elders said, "Hey, we think we can take it from here. You need to do what God's called you to do." So we left in September of 2020, which was really tough because we had never loved a church like we loved that church, and we had never been loved by a church like we were with that church. And so we knew it was a unique experience, and it was tough to leave, but we knew if we were going to work with an organization whose mission statement was to help churches take bold next steps, we needed to do that. So
And you moved to South Carolina because COVID didn't hit there, or
Yeah.
uh,
Well, it's funny. I originally we thought we were going to move to um, back to Phoenix, um, but there were several things pulling here. One was cost of living. Um, our both of our kids and my son's wife and two granddaughters live in New York City, so that was obviously a draw. And then our most challenged regions were on the East Coast. And so the other Reds, the other directors thought it would be advantageous if I could be on the or the East Coast to give them some more attention. So everything seemed to kind of pull us to this direction. And my son's in-laws are in South Carolina, so and we had family here, and it's a great community to live in. And at the time, I was able to really, we were able to get a house that was quite a bit cheaper than the Bay Area. So things worked together well.
yeah, that's not surprising that it's cheaper than the Bay Area.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy.
What's the vision for Venture Church Network? You talked about bold next steps. What's on the horizon?
Yeah, you know, we really want to help churches experience, and that whole bold next steps, and even the name venture came out of the process of what would our future be, and what are we want to focusing on. And as we look back at our history and saw that we had some leaders that took some risks. I mean, the idea of, at my age, walking away from a pension that I'm looking to for my retirement because of a doctrine, um, it's the right thing. I hope I would have the courage to do that same thing. And um, one of the definitions of venture is advancing in the face of risk or danger. And we thought, that really is the call God has for us. You look at Acts 4, you see Peter and John preaching at the temple, and the Sanhedrin sees them and hears them and confronts them, and they notice their boldness. And so they go through that whole process, release them with the idea, don't preach in Jesus's name. They go back to the church and they rejoice and they pray and they say, God, give us more boldness. And I think in our culture, we would say, God, take this persecution away, but they're asking for more boldness. And they go out and they preach with greater boldness, Acts says. And, we felt like that was the calling that God had for us. Is churches, we tend to play it safe. And as pastors, we tend to play it safe because we don't want conflict. And we're conflict adverse. And not that we should be looking for conflict, but we have a mission that should focus us and is going to create conflict from being just comfortable. And so if we could come alongside churches, not tell them what that next step needed to be, but either encourage them, be their biggest fan, pray with them, help them in the process of finding what that next step is, and resourcing them in any way we can to help them take the next step to see the gospel furthered. So our values are gospel driven. We think the gospel matters, and that the message that I'm preaching to those that don't know Jesus is the same message I need every day. We do think doctrine matters, so we're biblically faithful. We think we're called to make disciples, so we want churches that are disciple making, and we think relationships matter, so we want that connection happening. So those drive the values of our network. There are kind of three things we do. We want to connect pastors with pastors and churches with churches, and we want them to help each other We don't want to be the experts in the office. We think the experts are out there doing it, and let's connect them relationally. Secondly, we want to help churches take their bold next steps. So whatever we need to do to resource them or help them work through a model that would help them to be making disciples. And then thirdly, that we are multiplying, whether it's services or campuses or congregations. We want to be multiplying. So we're still in a rescue phase. Some of our regions are still struggling financially, and we're trying to demonstrate the new nature of what it means to be a part of this network. But I think through people like yourself and Excel and other ministries that are helping churches catch a vision for multiplying themselves and having something that is multipliable, we think is really important. So at the end of the day, if we could see gospel-centered transformational churches happening in our communities, that's the win. Venture Church Network we're here to serve the church, and we only matter if we do serve the church. And if at some point we're not able to serve the church well, then we need to close shop, because the church is who Jesus came and died for. And we're just an organization that is helping to bring people together so they can accomplish what God's called us to be and to do.
Great stuff. I love the bold next steps. I love what you're doing. You're doing a great job. Taking some bold next steps yourself, and what you're doing with the network's been pretty exciting to see. Hey, last question. Give us a leadership tip. You've been doing this for a while.
I think the biggest burden I have is the next generation. I think our generation did not do a good job in passing the baton off to other leaders. And if there is any regret I have in my own personal ministry, it's that I didn't spend more time mentoring and giving opportunity for leadership to the next generation. I think every pastor should be actively looking for opportunities to help the next generation. And we're too late if we're waiting till they graduate from high school or college to say, hey, have you considered ministry? I think even in the elementary years, we as churches need to be creating an environment where, serving the cause of Christ, looking for opportunities to make a difference in this church that he is building. You get to be a part of that and to tell those kind of stories. But to specifically be mentoring and engaging with the next generation and giving them opportunities to lead. We're holding on too hard. Mm-hmm. I heard, and I've heard this before. Someone this week mentioned about a pastor, and he was saying to his church and to his leadership and to us, he said, I've been here for 30 years, and my plan is to die in the pulpit. Well, that's great, for you, for someone to say, hey, he died serving Jesus, but is that really good for the church? Could he be saying, hey, my goal is to serve the church well until I die, and in the meantime, I need to set up the next generation. And unfortunately, in that church and in a lot of churches, they're not preparing for the next generation to take leadership because they're holding on to it and waiting till they die before the next generation gets to pick up the baton and doesn't know what to do with it. I was watching the Olympics last week or week before, and when the Americans fumbled the baton pass, as has happened in previous Olympics, I was immediately thinking about, what our mission and ministry is to really pass the baton well, that is going to make the difference in the race. And I can run as hard as I can, but if I don't pass the baton well, and if I don't do it in the zone that it needs to happen, um, we're going to fail at the race. And I've got over a dozen churches right now in our network looking for pastors. And for many of these, they're churches that are in rural communities. They're not naturally attractive to, hey, going in and seeing a church really boom because the community is growing. But they need pastors, they need shepherds, they need leaders, and they don't have them because pastors and leaders in the past haven't been building that pipeline. So, if there's anything I could do to encourage us who are still holding the leadership, look for opportunities to let other people lead and look for opportunities to mentor and shape the next generation so that we can get that pipeline refilled and see the gospel continue to blossom in our churches and communities.
That's that's brilliant. That's so necessary. And it's just, I mean, it's so biblical too. Things you've heard from me, pass on to others. So thanks for that encouragement.
Yeah, you'd think we would get it, but we don't.
We're holding on too tight.
Yeah,
Well,
we
hey,
really are.
David, thanks so much for your time. Thanks for all you're doing. Keep up the good work. Find some younger leaders.
Well, and you know what, JD, I want to take the chance here to just say how much I have appreciated you and Excel. Um, Even before I even got to know you, you were a part of helping us in Northern California get church planting off the ground. I didn't really have a clue how to get that going, and you were incredibly helpful to Josh Roten, who eventually helped us lead our church planning effort there. And you were very generous with your time and your resources to help us get that started. And you're helping other regions now in our network get churches planted and started as ministry. And I just want to say how grateful I am for you personally and for your friendship, but also especially for what you're doing in serving the broader church and seeing churches multiply. And I'm incredibly grateful, and will forever be grateful for your heart and ministry and generosity to us.
Well, thanks, David. That that means a lot. I have a heart for the Bay Area, obviously, Northern Cal, for you and for your network, and I'm excited about what God's doing. So thanks so much for being here.
Thanks. Great to be with you.
Thanks for joining the Leading Conversations podcast. We hope that you found it both helpful and encouraging. At Excel Leadership Network, our focus is on the church planter rather than the church. If you'd like to find out more about us, visit our webpage at excelnetwork.org. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. See you next time with another Leading Conversation. Christian Community Credit Union is America's leader in biblical banking solutions. As a trusted ministry partner of Excel Leadership Network, they are dedicated to serving ministries in all life stages of growth. Whether you're planting a new church or expanding, Christian Community Credit Union will come alongside your ministry to help you grow so you can serve more. They offer low-rate ministry loans as well as products to maximize your ministry's money, including high-interest checking, savings, and CDs. Take the next step and learn more at mycccu.com/excel. That's mycccu.com/excel. Membership eligibility is required.